Welcome to Oratio Podium, discussing intellectual thinkers, strategy driven communicators, and analytical minds, and leading voices shaping thoughtful discourse. I am your host, Kaushik, and today we have an exceptional guest joining us again for the show. Today, we are joined by Peace, a lawyer and strategy driven communicator known for her clarity of thought and ability to distill complex issues into accessible insights. Peace has a deep foundation in research, advocacy, and policy engagement, as well as contributing significantly to initiatives focused on governance, youth empowerment, and community centered development. Beyond the developmental work and legal work that she participates in, she also has an established powerful presence in competitive debating, where she has advanced in major regional and national tournaments, earning recognition for persuasive reasoning and analytical depth. They are also a dedicated mentor who coaches upcoming debaters on argumentation and public speaking, and we are sure that we'll have a lot to hear from Peace. So, welcome to Horatio Podium. If you would like to say a few words about yourself before we start off.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here. As previously stated, my name is John-Kalio. I'm a competitive debater based in Nigeria, and I've debated across many countries around Africa and online around the world. I'm also a lawyer, and I'm so glad to be here. I've been waiting for the past I think 5 years, and it's been like a wonderful experience. So
It's a pleasure to have you on board as well. And I think there is a lot of people we have from Nigeria also who are very actively in the debate circuit. And I know a few of them as well. I know Samuel. I had the chance to talk to Oliver Toby yesterday, and today we are discussing your journey as well. So I ask this to everybody, but it never gets old for me. And it becomes something of an interesting point of conversation. How did you really end up starting debating, and what drew you to this activity?
okay, so I think my how I ended up in debating was a really funny story because I didn't start a lot of my course mates started maybe in 100 level. I don't know if you know Davida. We were in the same school, the same class. So she stayed in 100 level. That was way before me. I was in 300 level then, and I was very active in other things like lead grade clinic, chambers, like more law related issues. And I had a friend then, or I have a friend because we are still friends. He was in 500 level, and he was the president of the Moot Debate and Quiz Society of Faculty of Law. And then we're just having a very off-brand, casual conversation. I was like, "Oh, one thing, um, I am a little sad I didn't try in university was debating because I just never like went into it." And then the next, like a few weeks later, it was the time for EVC. So EVC is Emirates Verbal Combat. It's our interfaculty in University of Ilorin. And then my friend Daniel that I had that conversation with just puts my name. Didn't even ask me. And that was how, at first I was skeptical about it, but because I had a lot of things going on, but I was like, why not? And then I did it. And I think we were first runner up. We ended up entering finals. And like that was my first experience with British parliamentary or anything like that. And then after that, we kind of were introduced to the debate club a little bit, and then we did expose. Expose was our pro am. So then I partnered. This is also a very popular person in the debate circuit, Halima Ojoni. She was the then president of University of Ilorin Debate Club. So it was a pro am partnership, and also we're first runner up. I think I was best novice speaker, and I think then it was just I what made me stay was the people in the debate club were really really fun. Like it was just like I felt like a sense of community that I had not felt before, and I was like, why not? And then from there we went to our first external tournament, which was Lagos Debate Open, and it was just a really enjoyable experience. And also having a background in law, I had also done things like mooting, but like this was to me because I ended up kind of putting mooting in the back seats for debates. Like I do a lot more debate than moot. And because it was kind of like a lot more interesting, especially British parliamentary where you're giving emotion and you just have 15 minutes to think about it. Like that was like a really stimulating experience for me. And I just really enjoyed it, and like the rest is history. I just continued debating.
Truly, I think I can relate to that experience firstly because I also graduated from law. And technically, apart from the one intramood that I ever did in my college, I never really went into mooding again because it was not really my thing. And people like have this very important thing which is there, at least in the country that I'm from India, that they need to do mooting to do better in terms of placements and do better in terms of career opportunities and all. But I don't know, I think debating has also helped, and I think debating is also an activity which is slowly gaining a lot more recognition in the subcontinent. But you've analyzed this particular aspect about how university experiences and your journeys have become so much important in terms of how you're applying as a debater. So competitive debating does require quite a lot of analytical depth, so does being a lawyer. How do you find this particular position that you're in as a lawyer, where you're debating, and how does this like feel to you when you're saying that these skills are also equally as good for you in the profession that you're choosing right now?
Yeah, so I think um the most important skill that I feel like is very similar with debating would be research, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about like the legal profession, at least in Nigeria, because like maybe anybody that thinks about law, they think about like arguing and shouting in the courtroom, but the way the legal profession right now is in Nigeria is a lot more documents wise. Like you hardly see the way you see maybe on suits where people are arguing objection my law. Like that's not really it. It's just really about like submitting documents, and all your arguments are written and stuff like that. So I feel like the most important skill is actually just research, knowing how to apply information you get to a particular case, but also like seeing things from different perspective. I think one of the things that really drew me into debating was the fact that we could debate like any topic, like literally when we say when I was very new in the debate circuit, one of the things that they focused on was even like very unhinged things, like they would bring it as emotion, like just so that you can get used to like debating on several things. So it makes you see things from like a very different perspective, and even you're debating things sometimes that may not really align with your political and personal beliefs. It also helps you in like the legal practice, because it's not every case that probably even the person that you are supposed to be representing, like you might not 100% agree with what they are doing, but it still makes you be a lot more tolerant and still able to see things from different perspectives. So I think like that's what mostly is for me.
Two critical pieces of information that we gleaned from there. I think one, you do mention quite importantly that people, for example, even judges, more importantly, have to maintain that neutrality, but also have to maintain that equivocal thought that they're needed to be like impartial towards sides. And also, as a lawyer, I think that becomes a critical thing that people need to approach. And I think that's a very important aspect that you touch upon there. But I think there is a couple of other things that become equally prone towards errors, where people are, say, approaching new topics and thinking about new things. Since you have coached and mentored upcoming debaters on argumentation, public speaking, and critical thinking, and since you are also like a lawyer practicing right now, what are some of the common things that you've seen people mess up quite frequently, and how do you think that people can improve in these areas?
Okay, so for young debaters, as in my experience, like with either even coaching, judging, all those things, I think the first thing, and I think this is going it's to them or to a lot of people, it seems like minimal, but to me, it's extremely important that I notice is that when I judge young debaters and they come for feedback, I ask them for their notes, and I feel like that is the number one like thing that they are missing. And like if you cannot get the basics right, it's very hard for you to get like the harder things right, because you see a lot of them, they hardly have notes of what they are going to talk about, or their notes are scattered. And that's, I tell them a lot that the number one thing I improved, because even when I kind of got good at debating, an issue I had was like with speaker scores. Like I was entering like finals and I was not on top 10 speakers and stuff like that. And one thing I had to take note of was the issues I had with my notes. Like so, and right now, even as I debate right now, I have comprehensive notes of everything I am going to talk about chronologically, and that has really helped me, even like obviously my structure and how it's easy to follow, and obviously that solved the whole speaker score issues for me and stuff. So I think that that's one of the things that debaters get wrong, is like they just neglect that. I don't know, maybe they see a lot of debaters that debate and judge without like writing and stuff, and they just think that you can jump into that like aspect. But I think like it's a process, and people are skipping the most important basic part of the process.
You discuss a few things which touch upon what important things need to be prioritized, or what things need to be prioritized importantly for different individuals who are going into this journey. But I think there are a couple of pieces of advice that I think we can come around and see that you can be better at, and you think you reflect upon that quite critically and well. The first thing that I would like to like carry forward from that discussion is that when people are meaning to go ahead and make changes in their debating journeys, and sometimes people feel that they are not doing as well, or maybe they're sometimes not like completely feeling the right vibe, maybe, if that, for lack of a better term, in terms of how they're debating. Sometimes they have expectations which bottleneck them, and I think those things are also problematic for individuals who are just entering, and even for people who are very experienced and have done this for a long time but are not seeing meaningful results. Since you mentioned speaking also, and I wanted to like think about this from your perspective, what do you think that people who are facing these issues should be doing in terms of like improving their thought processes?
Okay, so I think the best way to improve your thought process, I think maybe this people just assume that, oh, debaters are smart or are supposed to be smart, and I feel like if you're coming from the perspective that I'm already smart, it makes you a little bit reluctant in like improving that. But I think like which debaters should be like very open minded to finding new information. One thing I did as a when I was a novice was like I was on all the news sites, and if you know me, it's a little bit ironic because I study law, but if you live in a developing country like Nigeria, where you open the news and everything is bad news, it can get a little bit overwhelming. So I wasn't really a fan of like news and world issues, but getting into competitive debating is something I had to get over, and like all both national, both international news, and staying on top of things, even things that are seemingly trivial. So it's not just big world issues, but even what is happening in the influencer space, stuff like that, because those things also come out in motions. And I think it also makes you see things from different perspective, and like having like different opinions, and like having full information. So I think like that's a really important thing if you want to like improve, is to like obviously be fully informed, be open minded to everything, and just like you get, yeah.
When you're thinking quickly on your feet, you need to like also like look at different perspectives, and I think being that kind of a person where you are keen upon different things, as you mentioned also, that you have to be very keen in terms of looking at motions in a nice way, because if say influencers are in terms of like motion themes right now, and I think that there are also a lot of like different careful moments of journeys that people need to pitch and people need to understand. It also ties back into your growth story as a person, and I think becoming a lawyer or becoming any other person in your own field with these skills and with these like issues sorted out is something which is going to be better for you as well. So I think this also helps like navigating high pressure environments and unexpected professional situations. But in terms of your experiences personally, what do you think that these rhetorical skills that you've gained from public speaking or debating, and that you've taught to people also, you've seen them grow with these particular skills, what do you think these skills translate to in like real world experiences? Like for example, as a lawyer, you've mentioned this in terms of a few sentences before, that yes, you get more chances to scope out things, you get more chances to like neutralize things that you're not probably that much in tune with as your own personal belief system. What other things do you possibly think can be a benefit for following this activity?
Okay, so in real life issues, I think even without being a lawyer, debating skills, and like this is even something that a lot of debaters have experienced, that is they are very transferable skills even like in the professional world. You see debaters do way more better at like interviews, and are like seem to be very very creative even in the workspace. Like and I think that's one thing with the debating community. So you are seeing people that are from different works of life. So they are literally debaters that are into agriculture, into tech, into like different like professions, and you really see how debate has like been able to help them in those spaces, because it's even like growing your confidence to be able to like speak to anybody, like share your ideas, all those things like is very very important, like transferable skills. So I think it's not just, I think it's easier to relate debating with maybe a skill like law because like there's similarities. But what I do see is that even in the most random skills, like, or the most, should I say, far away skills, like even medicine, debating is one that has come to that has come to be very very important in lives of like debaters that are into these professions.
It brings us to a very nice transition into the next segue as well, because I think in this segment, when we look at your background, you have talked about being part of law, debate, social justice movements, and talking about feminisms and other social justice issues. How do you like reflect upon these things, and how do you find this interplaying into the broader scope of your work and also debating in general?
Okay, so um, I think for firstly in debates, obviously, I initially it's made me very very good at social justice motions and feminist motions. And even when I started being on cap for tournaments, like there was the thing Nigerian debaters would say, oh, like if you're seeing JK on cap, just know that you're gonna see a feminism motion. So like that was, it just became like some sort of specialty, I know, knowing that. But also I think like it's also gave me a broader aspect of even things that I believe in. So generally, like my thesis in 500 level was on feminism already, like international law under feminism. But debating has also like given me a lot of like, because if you're staying in line with if you're staying in line with what's happening in the world, you're knowing like exactly like social justice issues and stuff like that. It's, I think it makes you stronger in your belief, but it also makes you, gives you more fuller information. So you're not just saying, oh, I believe in this thing, but you also have like the arsenals to back it up, like to know that you have like a lot of information to also prove that probably what you believe in is right and stuff like that. And also like it makes like just bolder to talk about things that you believe in. So like fighting for like different, it's easier for me to like fight for like different causes, like right now, whether it is rape, gender-based violence, domestic violence, things like that. I think it just like boosts your confidence in those things too. So yeah.
When you're looking at different things that are happening around you, you often reflect upon those things, and that become key part and parcel of debating as well. And I think people would have noticed that when you're setting motions. I think even I would have probably heard this from a place or two, that you're very good at setting these kind of motions, and I think that becomes an interesting point of conversation. But when you're looking at thoughtful discourses and shaping better societies, I think in the world today there's a lot of like challenge, because people are maybe having shorter attention span because of social media, and some people claim, or maybe people are not getting the correct information at some point, or maybe getting too much information which is wrong or correct at the same time, where people are overloaded with information and so much. So if you have like this thoughtful legal discourse, or you're also like advancing issues in social justice or other areas, and you're using these as also a debater as a particular skill set, like you need to iron out what to watch, what not to watch, what to follow, what to read upon. What do you think are the tools that would help you, and what are the approaches that should be something that you could do better with?
I think movements and like the way like movements develop has to also go with the times. And that's why like in feminism there are obviously different waves of feminism and how like things were done and like the things that needed to be fought for within that time period. So I think like knowing the way that the world is right now and how people digest information and stuff like that is also important, that feminism goes with that. So because there's a lot of especially like within the Nigerian space, there's a lot of ridicule and like, oh, maybe they call in an attempts to ridicule like feminists, like, oh, they call you like a keypad warrior or a Twitter feminist. But I think like those are actually really important point of view, because if people, if you know that people, that's how people consume information right now, and everybody's on social media, everybody is like listening to 1 minute TikTok videos. That is also how you pass this information to get people to listen to you, because it's only when you have some level of, should I say, buy-in, and like people at least understand what you are fighting for, and people are moved by that, then you're able to get like any sort of traction or any sort of change. So I think like that's like a very important tool within like social justice movement and everything, is having to instrumentalize social media to gain traction. And I think we can see an example of how that worked in 2020 during the NSAS protests, where a very big part of the NSAS protest was social media, because I was personally on social media teams and like group chats and stuff like that. That was how like people were able to like organize and the protest, and like we saw like massive turnout. So yeah, that's what I think.
Very interestingly, you've said that you've done this particular thing as a lawyer and an activist when finding the balance between law, finding the balance for pushing for radical and necessary changes to law. The principle of legal precedence often gives you this idea that you cannot have dynamic social movements, because precedent means that you are following through with the current tradition of what the law dictates or what the code dictates in terms of the interpretation of the law. So that would have clashed with some point in terms of your ideology while debating, and there might be some like friction points between different aspects. So as an activist and as a lawyer, I know this is segueing a bit away from your journey as a debater in whole, but it's an important conversation point. How do you find that these issues occur, and how in developmental work or in advising on governance or community issues and empowerment, what do you think policy frameworks can do better, and how do you approach these things from the top to the bottom in terms of approaching different design thinking for these solutions?
Okay, so I think an important point of note is, someone said that it's not just important to have women in politics, it's important to have feminist women in politics. And coming from a developing country, I very like a very big issue we've had is obviously having, should I say, very older generation in political system, and like no new person within like politics and stuff like that. So you see that and like it's very prevalent, because if, no matter how hard you try, somebody that is 70 years old is not really going to understand the struggles of a 25-year-old. Like, that's especially being in the political class, because apart from age, also class, there's class dividers. So I think a very important thing is to integrate like young women and young men, like people that have like obviously have knowledge about these issues and stuff like that within those spaces, like be inclusive in those spaces to be able to get any sort of traction. Because I think even if maybe those political classes say, oh, we are listening to Gen Z and stuff, like if you're not in if you're not incorporated, it's just like, it's just story, like audio, like they're just to get people to vote for them and stuff like that, and you don't see any real political change. So I think like that's very the most important thing right now, is like to get some level of inclusion into like important spaces in the political fair.
You do mention inclusion, but I think inclusion also harbors this fear with people, right? People are often afraid that what does this inclusion mean, but also how to get included without like probably getting in any sort of trouble or problem. So just how do you like reflect on this? How do you like give advice to these individuals who are often having problems, be it in any space, right? Because sometimes people would be like, oh, the debating space might be a bit toxic, I do not want to really go into it. Somebody might say that, oh, social activism seems quite hard, it's not something that I really need to focus upon right now. There is always like a lot of political backlash or other things that happen. So if you're alleviating all these concerns and looking at different things, what would you probably say?
I think like the most important thing to take note is that no matter how much you try to avoid political discourse, politics is going to affect your life one way or the other. Like I've seen various examples on social media where maybe somebody is apathetic, or somebody is like in support of, let's say, bad policies, and those same bad policies end up coming to bite them like 1 year later. Like it's going to, and I think that's very, very important, because I feel like a lot of human empathy comes from the fact that knowing that something is also going to affect you. I don't think it should necessarily be that way, but unfortunately, people don't care about things until they know that it can affect them. So I think like that's something to know, that um you can be comfortable right now probably being apathetic, but what happens in a year time or in 2 years time when you need these same policies that are going to better your life? So I think like that's just the mindset to go into it, that everybody, and if all hands are not on deck, you're not really going to get any change. So you can't just rely on maybe one or two people to continue to be the voice of change, because like obviously movements and policies need numbers, they need traction, they need people talking about it and stuff like that. So like if everybody is not putting in their quota, like we are all just going to continually be affected by these issues. And like there's if you're not a millionaire or a billionaire that probably can escape to any country you want, then I think it's something that you should definitely care about.
So there's always like a lot of points in terms of considering different perspectives, and you hit the nail on the head when you say that people do not often get the choice in, say, the country that they're born in, or maybe the birth lottery isn't that favorable to them, so they need to like speak out for what they want and speak out for what they need. And I think that becomes a very good social message for individuals who need that particular ambit of like thinking about critical issues and thinking about narratives which are going to bring social change and meaningful to them. I think that closes the segment out very well. I think the last thing with this conversation point about inclusivity was also something which is very important to consider in the global scope of things. But discussing a bit more about your gib- um, discussing a bit more about your like debating experience in majors. So you've done like many major tournaments regionally and nationally as well as internationally. So at any point of time, when did you think that debating was more than just something of a hobby, or was something that you wanted to pursue a bit further, which you have, as you mentioned, for 5 years now?
Okay, so um I think personally my debates, I to be honest, 50% of the reason why I debate is just to, is like more about the community, and especially physical tournaments, because a lot of, especially if you exist in the African debate space, most of the time they're not really paying you or stuff like that. So it's about community and uh having to meet your friends. Like I've met a lot of wonderful people like in the debate circuits, that's like I don't know how my life would have been without like meeting those people in this time. So that's half of it. And I think like the other half obviously is being like, naturally humans are competitive and all, and knowing that you can beating yourself at your own game. So I feel like the only competition I have is myself, and being able to be better than you did the last time or the last year and stuff like that, and beating personal milestones. So like those competitions, both internationally, regionally, those have just been a way for me to measure my own growth as a person within the debate circuit and my debate skills.
The interesting aspect about looking at different things in terms of your debating, in terms of how experiences are, in terms of how aspects are considered, in terms of how things are going to be nurtured, I think the first thing that you need to be critical about is your idea about means what debating means to you, what meaning you want to get from debating. And I think that becomes a very like nice turning point in discussions as well. But let's discuss a bit more about your experiences in Nigeria, because you touched upon it a bit further. And I think you mentioned you're from the University of Ilorin. It has a very robust debating tradition. I have interviewed within the 10-15 guests in the past at least three people from your university at least, and I think that all of them have had shared experiences in terms of how good the debating culture in your university is, but also how good the Nigerian debating culture is growing towards becoming better and better. So, what have you seen in terms of your own university as well as the broader Nigerian debating circuit, which has maybe encouraged you to do so, or what are the positive signs that you see from your own university and things there in and of itself?
Okay, so I think one of the most important things from the University of Ilorin Debate Club was, I don't know if anybody that went to Ilorin, should I say, one of our motto was, oh, being undeniable. So there's a lot of talks in the circuits. Like I don't know, I don't know how true a lot of them are, but it's always about like maybe probably if you do not perform the way you want, the people complain about oh agenda bias stuff like that. I think one of the things that the University of Ilorin tried to instill was to be undeniable. That means that even if they are being biased or agenda or something like there's a way that you can debate that you would be like the bias cannot touch you because you would be so good that it is so clear that everyone knows who's supposed to be winning. And I think like that's a lot of a reason why a lot of uniloring debaters, at least in Nigeria, the debate culture, the biggest union right now it's like University of Ilorin, and that has been the way for a while because like Ilorin debaters don't just go into oh let me win, and if I don't win somebody is like manipulating the results for it. I think we go into it knowing that like we have to get better, like and beating our own personal records at every point in time, and like showing the world and showing Nigeria and African circuits that like who that we know what we are doing basically. Yeah, and there's a culture of like training, like when I at least when I was in the union, we would even have overnight trainings. So like uh then the people that were in charge of the union, they were really really serious about it, and you could see that debate culture in them, and it was something very good that you wanted to emulate, and that was how like the union just continued over time.
There are a few things you mentioned about Nigerian debating circuits as well. So, is there any persuasive style, or is there any like particular style that you find very common in the Nigerian circuit, or any commonalities that you find within debating at Unilorin? If I'm pronouncing the name correctly, sometimes I do make a mistake with it. But yeah, do you find anything that broader in broader terms in Nigeria that is very common among debating strategies? Because you mentioned being undeniable, but let's just hear a bit more about what this undeniability would look like in the groundwork. What do we understand by this term? Because I am a bit sure about what it is, but I'm also a bit unsure about what it might be. So if you could just elaborate a bit more about that.
Okay, so the debating strategies there are, I think, like obviously, the way people debate in different circuits have kind of differ. The way it is in Africa compared to like abroad, like the way it's international circuits. International circuits are more like rhetorics, and it's very easy to just like uh debates, maybe even with just one idea, and like as long as you flow it makes sense. I don't know, like I don't know, Nigerians are, should I say, they are very I don't know the word to use, but there are some certain things that you have to when you're debating. It's not just about maybe rhetoric, or you probably can't just be in a debate with one idea. Like you have to prove every single thing, like uh, right from beginning to the end. Different mechanisms, examples, like you have to very make it extremely clear that and break down every single thing that you're winning. Like you're not going to assume that, oh, I think even if like somebody is saying the sky is blue in a debate round, you have to like go extra levels to prove that the sky is blue. So I think like that's a lot of it, like in the Nigerian circuit and even like in the African circuit and stuff like that. Should I say that it's very very we it has to go extra miles because everybody is like also going extra miles in a round. So yeah, that's just it.
The passion and the commitment is definitely something that people from Nigeria have a lot in abundance of. And I have a lot of appreciation and a lot of like conversations with my friends about how they are like going ahead in the circuit and approaching different things. You've done also a lot of things in terms of international circuits and also in terms of international tournaments, some examples being Wagyu and MIWSDC. So when you've done these like international tournaments, is there any differences you faced when you're comparing styles, or if there are any differences you have faced in terms of how the tournaments operate or how you are like going ahead and participating in these issues?
So like on the part of how the tournaments operate, I think the main difference or the first culture shock I had in international tournaments were them keeping to time. African tournaments do not keep to time. I don't know about. I've not done a lot of physical tournaments there, so maybe I don't know about the way they do like in organization. But like physical tournaments in Nigeria and Africa, like we had finals in the midnight. Like that's how they don't skip to time. So I think that was the first culture shock I experienced internationally. But then when it comes to debating and all, I feel like firstly, as I said, it's way more. I think like everybody is a lot more chill on the international space. Should I say Nigerians and Africans are very, very passionate, and it shows in the way they debate and the way they try to prove things. Like you would see an extension speaker would come and say, "Oh, I have 12 extensions." Like that only happens in Nigerian circuits. Like so I think like just there's kind of like a different vibes on the international space like compared to what happens like in Nigerian debate circuits.
The comedic timing of the timing of tournaments is the worst thing that you can possibly like have in terms of Indian circuits and also a lot of like Asian tournaments. It's just that sometimes people just choose to be a pain and they don't turn up, and it becomes an issue altogether. But there are also a lot of like interesting things you mentioned previously which I would want to like touch upon when we are discussing different aspects of your journey and your discussions around your metal as a judge and a speaker. So you've mentioned you've scored a lot of tournaments. So what have you experienced as a core when you have been, say, motion setting, or when you have been approached for doing this? How do you approach this subject? How did you get your first like call up to become a core at a tournament? And also, what are like the trajectories that you've taken in terms of encapsulating things that would make sense for tournaments to approach you to become part of the core panels?
Okay, so um I think my first experience as on the core team was our interfaculty. Um, that was like a year later or so after I started debating a year or two. So and then obviously it graduated into like other tournaments and stuff like that. So I think firstly, if I apart from like being a like obviously being a good speaker, being a good judge, and also like setting cool motions. I think one of the most very important thing in a core team is to be kind of try to carry everybody along in the debates, like in as participants, and also try to be inclusive like as like trying to sort of play be should I say democratic. And personally, when I came into debate circuit, I was very, very fiery. So should I say I was very known as to be very straightforward. So I don't try to pacify feelings, but the way being on a lot of captains, I've realized that it goes beyond just the logical and academic aspect of it, but also knowing how to um pacify participants and stuff like that, to know that everybody's best interest, to know that their best interest is being carried along, and obviously the motions. So the motions having to be like interesting, also to be like on issues that are, should I say, imminent, and maybe like popular issues and stuff like that, and issues that are important to individuals, especially within that space. Because like if you're on cap for a Nigerian tournament, it's different for if you're on cap on maybe an Indian tournament or a Canadian tournament. Like emotions are obviously going to differ, and the types of emotions that you set and stuff like that. But also like obviously the equity aspect of it, knowing that it's not just everything that people should argue, because even something that might be arguable, for example, in a lot of Nigerian tournaments would you would not see motions on ethnic and internal tribalism, because that is a very like touchy subject within like Nigerian space and stuff like that. So knowing those kind of things is very important, and obviously having to be able to balance those things out.
the aspects about international tournaments is that there are cultural and significant barriers that you need to, like, in terms of communal spaces and social narratives, that you need to like navigate around. So I'm pretty sure that this was some experience for you too in terms of your journey, and I think this would be a segment that we discuss a bit later in the podcast as well, before we touch upon the ending. So I think the last thing that I would probably like discuss in this particular section is how you have experiences in Pan-African University Debating Championships, a major highlight tournament from, say, the continent. So if you're going into tournaments like PAUDC, ANUDC, and all of these like international tournaments or large scale regional tournaments or in national tournaments, what are the mindsets that you need to approach this tournament with as a speaker or as a judge, and what are the unique things that you've had experiences in these particular tournaments with?
Okay, so my first PAUDC was in 2023. And I think a very important thing to note in PAUDC, and obviously this is going to extend to even other bigger tournaments like WDC, is that these regional tournaments are not as, should I say, as big as they should be, also due to like accessibility issues and all. Because like even especially like Nigerian teams, most for the past how many PADCs, maybe you would see two, three Nigerian teams like in the entire PADC and stuff like that. But it's going to change next year because PADC is going to be in Nigeria next year. So I would hope that Nigerians would attend PADC in Nigeria. But that's like one thing that I noticed, that like they are not as big as they should be because of accessibility issue. And a very important thing is also the way universities take the debating culture and how important they view it as. Because um for example, my personal experience, and it was even better within Ilorin, like because other universities were way worse off. Like my personal experience with Ilorin was that like every year they would say, "Oh, we are gonna sponsor you guys for PADC," and then it comes to PADC time, and then something happens. Oh, there's a new VC, or the budget was not approved. Like different excuses. So I think this already demoralizes even individuals that are going into PADC. So like the PADC I went for, obviously I sponsored myself. So individuals that maybe sponsor themselves there, because a lot of times universities don't really give you the enough backing that you need, are already demoralized from beginning. But also it means that some universities obviously have way more experience and way more numbers there. So you obviously are going to feel a little bit, um disadvantaged right from beginning, and obviously that's going to like affect the way that sometimes affects performance and stuff like that within those things. Well, I think that what as debaters is knowing what exactly your goal is in the debate circuit and what exactly you want to do. Because personally, I wanted to attend PADC and I made sure I attended PADC myself and stuff like that. So if it's something that's important to you, is to know how to approach these things, and how to, even though you may not have lots of support and stuff like that, but being able to still navigate these spaces on your own. But it also means that like also finding alternate means. So it may not just, like the time I went for PhD, we went in a group and stuff like that. So from different schools. So things like that, also finding support within communities where you probably cannot get complete support from your universities, are very, very important, like in those spaces.
So that brings us to a very interesting close to this discussion, because I was about to ask you about accessibility, but you already touched upon that. I think you can become smarter in terms of the way that you plan approaches, but I think the circuit also has a broader message that it needs to like deal with these issues of accessibility, maybe a bit more funding, a bit more issues like hybrid tournaments being categorized as not that bad and also getting more like recognition and more like critical acclaim, so that people can approach these hybrid tournaments with less expenses, can become a very important consideration towards democratizing access and also helping debaters become more present in terms of this sport becoming more global. But let's move on to the next small segment that I need to discuss. This is a small section I wanted to talk to you about because you mentioned being a mentor and a coach. So, what are these particular traits that you think that you have which would be better in terms of coaching and mentoring for somebody who's wanting to probably go into this field, or maybe coaching or mentoring their own juniors or people that they're close with?
Okay, so I think an important trait then is, oh, firstly, um, it goes beyond like being logical and being academic and being smart. Because I think like you can be a very, very smart person and not know how to like pass those information to individuals. So I think it's also really knowing your audience and knowing each and every person that you are coaching. So like, and I think that takes careful consideration into like individuals. So like, even if you're coaching 5 people or 10 people, like, do you know these people and how their skills are probably going to be best used in what aspects? Because from my experience, I met people that were not particularly great speakers but were amazing judges, right? So like, if you're forcing those kind of people to just still try to speak, because probably like in the Nigerian circuit there's a bias of maybe, speaking is the more important like aspect of debating than judging. I think like, and then everybody decides to speak and then you don't get good judges and then everybody starts complaining. So like, that's the whole thing. So like, knowing where people talent lies and being able to like utilize it to the fullest, but also people keeping people engaged within the circuit. So there, going back to the accessibility issues, there are tournaments that I had to personally sponsor, like junior students in my faculty, just so that they can go and experience debating on like a physical aspect, to even get them interested and engaged and stuff like that. So yeah, I think like those are very, very important. And as I said, it takes being like, you're not just coaching because of, maybe it's just something to do, but it's something that you're really, really interested and passionate about.
Yeah, the passion is necessary. Sometimes it can be very nerve wracking, but sometimes it can also be very rewarding, coaching or mentoring people. And I think that becomes the important thing that you're considering in terms of how you're navigating these issues. The last question that probably would be is that what was the point where you think that your coaching and mentoring journey has been successful? Like, if you've had students who are going and doing these activities, you have mentioned about them broadening their horizons by going to different tournaments, doing different aspects of things. Where do you think that these particular goals of coaching and mentorship should lie for different individuals who are approaching this? Because many people approach this activity with some goal or the other in mind, but not always a positive one. So how do you deal with those?
Okay, so um, I think a part where I saw like, obviously, that there was some level of success was last year, because in Nigeria we do this debater deal, so like it's awards for different categories and stuff like that. And I saw people that I coached that had just that started debating maybe just 1 or 2 years, were like winning best Nigerian judge, best female judge of the year, all those things. So like, obviously, like that's made me like very, very happy. And also like, just seeing like performance, and I think it even goes beyond trophies and medals, but seeing them continually being interested in the circuit and still showing up for tournaments, even maybe ones that have not probably reached their expectations yet, but still showing up. I think showing up is extremely important. So that means like that you are doing something right to keep them even still engaged in this sport.
Yeah, true. I think that wouldn't be a better end to that particular aspect of discussing mentorship and also coaching. The last segment we probably want to talk to you about is your journey as an equity officer, and you've done this so many times. It's how I got to know you and how I got to interact with you as well and become, like, in a conversational sense, acquainted with you. But how do you think that this journey has shaped out for you? What got you into equity? What essentially is equity for people who are not that aware about what equity in debates are, and how did you come into this particular activity?
Okay. So I think I did a role as equity officer even before I started being on CA, and I think that was pre PAUDC. I think 2023 or so. So like, I obviously being in debate circuit, knowing seeing like what equity officers do and their role in the tournament. Then I mean, I was already like a bit interested in like, oh, like this seems like a very, very important role, especially on in tournaments where and I think I got this more of this when during online tournaments and tournaments that included like other African countries, because at first Nigerian tournaments or especially offline did not have equity officers. Even now, like we still go into tournaments and we don't have equity officers. Like if you have an issue, maybe like CAP or OC are the ones that are going to deal with it. But seeing those like what was happening on the international circuit and knowing their rules and seeing like especially that there were issues that required some level of expertise in dealing with those issues. So like for example, maybe especially somebody that belongs to a minority class, like if you're black or you're a woman or LGBTQ stuff like that, and how so there were some things that because obviously not all debaters are woke in context, like and some experiences that they had. So I felt like that already made me see how important the role of being equity officers were. So my first when I did the like became an equity officer, I think I worked alongside with people like Joy, Hadome, and stuff like that. And it's really opened me up to see more importantly how why equity was really, really important and how it made people feel comfortable within debate circuit. So it's not just going into debate tournaments, but knowing that I can go into debate tournaments and be sure that I'm going to have safe experiences. I think like that became really, really important for me, especially for somebody that also belongs to a few of the minority classes and stuff like that.
So, could you guide us through a typical work that equity officers are meant to do in terms of tournament preparation and how to manage tournaments and just day to day? How do you look at tournaments and what are the roles that you fulfill?
Okay, so it goes from before the tournament, obviously preparing a equity document. So those are the rules and regulations of the tournament, preparing a clash form. So for when the participant list is out, people can look at the participant list and know who you're going to clash. And clashes are not just arbitrary, but also like for specific reasons. Maybe somebody that you have dated before, or your family member, or maybe you've had serious conflicts with stuff like that. Knowing who to clash from there, but also being available, like during the tournament, obviously being available um like throughout the tournament for people to be to be a safe space to for people to be able to like come and report to you like if they have issues. And also like apart from that, it's even I think right now with the development of AI and stuff, it also has even included a new aspect of equity because of like now people probably use AI to debate and stuff like that. Also being able to dissuade people from using those tools, but in cases where they do use those tools, um how to be able to note if AI was used, all those things, and also repercussions for incidents. I think luckily a lot of tournaments, it's maybe 1% of those chances that you have like very, very serious repercussions where you have to disqualify a participant or stuff like that. But I think most times just persuading and in cases of where issues come up, maybe them issuing an apology has always been like enough to douse tensions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Great. I think when people have also worked so intrinsically with things like social justice movements and dictations around, say, feminism and also other issues around society, they also get pretty like equally involved in thinking about the equity space in a more like ethical and equitable manner, if you might say it in that sense. But is there anything particular that you've seen in like your region that as an equity officer or perhaps in say tournaments abroad that as an equity officer you've seen happening as a problem where you would probably say that it needs to be changed or it needs to improve?
Okay. So I think the biggest issues I have had, uh, I've seen in tournaments, apart from people using AI, because those ones are mainly newer debaters and all. I think it's issues with debaters and judges because this has always been a prevalent issues. Um, and I don't know. I feel like there's has to be a way to balance it because there's a perception right now that many people of the core education panel and the equity officers are mainly, should I say, support judges. And I think I know why that happens because obviously not everyone wants to go into judging. So if we have like very few people that like actually really really like judging apart from people that speak and stuff like that, and if there are few people that do that, like it's also obviously we have an incentive to protect them, that debaters are not harassing them because you do not like a call and stuff like that. The dicey aspect is that at the end of the day, when there's complaints, if you're not in that room yourself, I cannot evaluate the debate to know that if you were in the right and the judge actually did you badly or stuff like that. So it's very difficult to prove from a debater's perspective and all. But I think it's also knowing that especially in good tournaments, that CAP members have your best interest at heart. So obviously we try to balance panels, and it's not just maybe one judge, there are several panel. And to be honest, if three people think you were third or you were fourth, like I think like it should give you some perspective that, oh, maybe there's something I did wrong in this particular thing, right? So but right now it's just, oh, there's always issues of, oh, this judge was bad, and then you're going to harass the judge, or you're going to call them out and stuff like that, or intimidation tactics that people use with judges. And I think that that's an issue that we need to really address, and like things need to change within the circuit on those issues. Yeah.
Very interesting, but also quite like relevant in terms of how balancing interest between what the judges and cores would want for a tournament and the OC would want for the tournament, with what, say, an equity officer needs to do in terms of this particular addressal of issues, and determining what changes are needed and what type of aspects need to be taken into consideration. Before we close out, what are some of the most memorable experiences debating that you've had before we move on to the rapid fire section?
So memorable experiences in debating I've had are a lot. Firstly, I think maybe the first time I went for PAUDC, and when we arrived, because when we did PAUDC in Togo, Togo is a French speaking country and we speak English, so we didn't really know French. Like it was very hard to communicate. And then I don't know if you've heard about some of the issues that happened in PADC Togo, but it was filled with drama. Like there was a lot of issues. Oh, how the host school embezzled money. I don't know. There was so many things. So even right from beginning, the journey to the place, it was also even problematic. How we literally had to enter a, should I say, a truck to take us to the hotel. Like it was a very very weird experience, to the extent that I had to miss an entire day of debating because I felt really ill. Like I was so stressed from the entire things that were happening, and I had missed a day. So that was like very very memorable, both in a good and bad way. And then obviously I've had really great experiences like in tournaments like World War. That's the one, the open that my school hosts. Lagos Debates Open. That was the first external that I attended, and it was so fun. Like we went to the beach, house parties, stuff like that. And I think it's also demystified the whole narrative that, oh, debaters are just boring nerds. Like, do you get? So I saw that there was a lot of like cool and interesting like people and activities within debate circuit. So I think those were pretty memorable for me.
There are truly different experiences and different levels of things that you have, like exposure to while debating. You make friends, you make colleagues, you meet people in different forms and different shapes and sizes in terms of the way in which they matter to you, and also like give you a meaning in your life and what kind of experiences you get from them. So let's just quickly have a quick let's quickly have like a fun little round of rapid fire questions. Please answer in one word or a short sentence, whichever is the better way of doing it for you in terms of the question. So, the first one, the skill you value the most above preparation.
Research,
Better to be eloquent or to be logical?
logical,
The thing that gives you the most amount of pleasure while debating.
Suspense.
One reform you'd like to make to the British parliamentary debate format.
I don't know. Stop people from using AI.
Very, very relevant and very, very topical right now. The most crucial trait for a lawyer from debating experiences.
Research and confidence.
Interesting. Feminism in one sentence.
Equality for all.
Skill that you have for debating.
Extensions.
The best tournament you've ever been in.
Lagos debate open.
Very interesting. Your go to strategy for overcoming a persuasive opponent.
Mm, logic.
One thing that truly fuels your curiosity.
Reading.
The biggest challenge facing youth empowerment today.
Oh, apathy. People not being interested.
True, very true. People get very disjointed from the reality that they exist in. Best piece of advice about debating I've ever received?
Be undeniable.
Perfect. So that's a very interesting wrap to our discussion. So, peace, this has been a very insightful session for all of us. I'm pretty sure the viewers and listeners would get away with a lot of information about equity, judging, and also the debating circuit in Nigeria, as well as debating in majors and tournaments across the world. But in general, also have deep insights about you as a person and how your journey can motivate them or give them like charisma towards becoming better speakers and judges as well. And before we just end up with the final few words, what would you like to share with the audience as the last few words from your end, and one place where we can see you next in the debating space?
Okay, so where you're going to see me next in the debate space, online would most likely be next weekend with pre-PAUDC happening. I'm on cap, and offline probably would be. I unfortunately I'm not going for the PADC happening this year, but next year would be ANYDC, so All Nigerian Youth Debating Championship. That happens early, and then obviously KDO, a tournament very dear to my heart. Kumasi Debate Open that happens in Ghana every May. I'm also on Ocom for that. So yeah, and then just parting words. I just feel like I don't think you should get into like debating or be a debater just for the medals and the trophies. I really think for in order for you to win, it has to be an experience that you enjoy. So like you should just get into it to like enjoy the experience and enjoy every moment, both as a speaker, both as a judge, both the logical aspect and the drama aspect, and also maximize the opportunity of meeting new people every day. As I said, like half of the important people in my life right now are people I met in the debate space. So, yeah.
Very interesting, and that's a wonderful place to end off as well. Thank you, Peace, again for combining your treasure trove of experiences and vast legal rigor and human centered thinking and critical thinking about debating, also with your experiences to share with the audiences who are listening in or viewing this particular podcast. They are pretty sure to take away a lot from this. Thank you again for tuning in to Oratio Podium, to our listeners at home, and join us next time as we continue to explore the world of effective communication and intellectual achievement. Until then, stay curious and keep building. Thank you so much again. Peace. See you again soon.
Thank you.